Welcome back to another episode of the Advanced Colorado Rundown. I'm Christy Burton Brown, Executive Vice President here at Advanced Colorado, joined today by a very special guest, Senator Byron Pelton, who represents a large area in rural Colorado. He also serves in the Senate as a Republican caucus chair, or better known as third in command. So we have some really interesting issues to talk about today as he, really recently wrapped up the 2025 legislative session. Fentanyl is something that we're going to address. He had a really excellent bill that sadly didn't pass, but has become part of the basis of a ballot measure that Advanced Colorado has already gotten through title board and looking at for the 2026 election. So definitely want to cover that with you, Senator Pelton. And then also let's just talk in general about agriculture in Colorado and some of the attacks that are still coming from the state level. So fentanyl first. Sound good?
Sounds great. Fentanyl, the bill that I ran this last year, I was just very proud of it because I worked very diligently with my sheriffs and some of my police chiefs about what they are seeing in our communities out there in eastern Colorado. And one of the things that they were seeing is that we have a huge methamphetamine problem, but now they're starting to mix fentanyl within the methamphetamines. So they really wanted me to target the drug dealers and really focus in on anybody peddling poison to our children. And me, as a former county commissioner and in charge of Department of Human Services in Logan County, one of the things that we saw was overdose issues, especially when we had, for instance, give an example, we had two parents who passed away from overdose issues that then had to turn their three children over to the county. Wow. This hurts not only the kids, but it also hurts the taxpayers in our communities. So we really focused on the drug dealers on that bill, that if you were peddling poison, and we actually made an onus in there where the district attorneys had to prove that they were selling it for money and that they were actually doing that, and you were going to be tacked on with a Class 1 drug felony.
Right, and a Class 1 drug felony, for anyone who hasn't followed all the different levels of penalties in Colorado, it's mandatory jail.
It's mandatory jail.
8 to 32 years, whereas all the other drug felonies, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think all the other drug felonies have, it's like most likely jail time for some of them, but you could do probation, and the lower ones are almost always probation only.
And we've seen in the legislature where they've moved a lot of those felonies to misdemeanors.
Yes.
What my sheriffs call it is catch and release, is what they call it. So you're
Exactly.
putting drug dealers back on the street to continue to do what they've been doing, what they got caught for in the first place.
Right.
So the issue here is that we're trying to prevent drugs being put on the streets. I will tell you that I wasn't surprised at all because we had one Democrat side with us in the committee. It was a 4-3 vote, so
close.
It was very close. But we had one of the Democrats on the other side that actually sided with us to say that this is an issue. It's a huge issue.
Absolutely.
And one of the talking points that drove me nuts during that committee is that they said, well, the overdoses have gone down. Yes, they've gone down a little bit, but it's still an increase from what we've seen since 2020.
Oh, absolutely.
Huge increase of fentanyl overdoses. Right. And one of the things that really opened my eye was the movie Devastated. It's on YouTube.
Yes.
And you can really see they did an interview with the coroner in Denver. They did an interview with myself. They did an interview with sheriffs across in my district, all across the state of Colorado. Parents and families whose kids have died from thinking that they had Xanax, but it was fentanyl.
Right, or Percocet or whatever they think they're
yes.
getting. And we actually, I think about a month ago now, we put out a report at Advanced Colorado, like the human cost of fentanyl. And we reference a number of stories in that documentary, Devastated, which I agree everyone should watch because there's so many people in Colorado. I mean, if you're here, you probably know someone who's been affected by fentanyl. And the number of kids and teenagers and people who are able to buy it at school or find it on social media. So I agree with you. They do make this a big deal out of, overdoses are lessening. Well, that's great. I mean, anyone would be happy with that. But a big reason for that is also Narcan is more available. They have it in a lot of schools now. They're carrying it in, EMTs vehicles and ambulances, and policemen in some counties are carrying it, which is great. But that doesn't mean people aren't still taking fentanyl. Right. So you have to get the dealers out and put them in jail if you want to solve that, I think.
Well, and it was so important that my wife and kids sat and watched the Devastated, because I wanted to educate them on, please don't take anything that is given to you, only given to you from your parents or a doctor.
Yes, exactly.
That's what you need to take. I mean, even an aspirin, do not take an aspirin from your coach or anything else. I'm not saying that it would be laced with fentanyl, but you just don't know where it's coming from.
Right.
And you need to make sure that it's coming from a trusted source.
Oh, sure.
And so we wanted to make sure to throw that out there. And I think the most important part that you learn about Devastated is how widespread this is throughout our state.
Yes.
And the deaths that are being caused by fentanyl, it is the number one killer of 18 to 35-year-olds. The number one killer in the nation.
Right. Well, people who should be in the prime of their life and
correct.
not really have an issue with dying from an illness or sickness for the most part. But they're, getting involved in this issue that's so freely available in Colorado. And to your point, Senator Pelton, I think fentanyl, it's not something that we see in pockets in Colorado. If we talk to a lot of law enforcement, DAs, sheriffs, police in our work at Advance, when we're looking at different ballot measures, and they say, exactly what they're saying to you, like, this is everywhere. And every kind of drug, including marijuana, which is legal in Colorado, is being laced with fentanyl because the dealers know if they can get you in on it, it's good business for them. And I don't know if you saw this in your bill that you ran, but one thing we were hearing is that right now there's not a whole lot of incentive when the DAs want to take the mid-level drug dealers and flip them on the high-level drug dealers. But if you pass a ballot measure that says you sell any amount of fentanyl whatsoever and you're going to mandatory jail time, then they have a bargaining chip. So did you hear about that too?
Yes, I did. In fact, our district attorneys, my district attorney who testified on the bill actually said that. And you know what the public defender said?
No, I'm curious.
They said that we don't think the state needs to act that way.
Oh, okay.
So we're going to just let
Don't go find them.
Yeah, we'll figure out a different way to figure it out. That's exactly what they're saying. And there is a certain lobbying group up there that just drives me crazy with we're going to let people out on the streets continue to peddle poison and just look the other way. Right. And that is what is hurting the state of Colorado right now with drugs all across the board. It's just a terrible thing.
Well, and I think what's rough is in Colorado right now in the legislature, when you look at any issue that touches public safety, you see this huge problem where even when you're talking about the worst of the worst, you're talking about violent criminals, you're talking about repeat felons, you're talking about the highest level drug dealers and finding a way to catch them and put them in prison. Even that's
traffickers.
Human traffickers, exactly. People who prey on children in particular.
Yes.
We don't even want to put them in mandatory jail. Like that's the idea that too many of the legislators have, and all these bills that are good, like yours, are failing, some of them failing barely in committee, but because too many of the Dems in particular on committee, I think a lot of them identify themselves as Democrat socialists, not just your typical average Democrat on the street who typically, according to polling, agree with these measures and the bills that you're running. That's just not the kind of person, unfortunately, you see in the legislature right now.
And I think that it's a sad state of affairs in the state of Colorado when the legislature, who should be listening to their constituents, cannot get the job done, that we have to go to the vote of the people. The people should be the ones telling us what to do. And when we go to the vote of the people and we have ballot initiatives that, for instance, the one where the cops got a lot more money, with public safety got a lot more money. That is something that we should have been doing as a state legislature years ago.
Right.
And now we had to go to the vote of the people, and I can't remember how much it won by, but that is exactly what we should be doing, is stuff like that, to make sure that our public safety is doing what they're supposed to be doing and keeping us safe.
Well, and particularly when U.S. News and World Report now says that Colorado is the number 2 most dangerous state in the nation.
That's correct.
It's like these are some areas of focus that the state should probably have and probably add to.
Priorities.
There is such a thing. The other piece of your bill, and so many pieces of your bill were instrumental in the ballot measure that we're getting through title board. So the piece I want to ask you about is treatment. We call them treatment mandated felonies. But I think your bill may have handled it a little differently, so you can explain your vision behind that and kind of how you made it work. But basically, when you're talking about users, no one is out there saying, "Oh, let's put all people who are addicted to fentanyl, some of whom got addicted to fentanyl through legitimate opioids that they took from their doctors through prescriptions, and then they weren't warned about how addictive they were, and now they're addicted." And these aren't people who like want to be in the drug world. It's a lot of people that we're talking about. So no one wants to be putting those kind of addicts into prison. That's not the point. And so in our ballot measure, we make treatment mandated felonies where if you have a certain amount in possession, you're not dealing, it's for yourself, you can wipe a felony off your record, never even be charged with it at all if you agree to go to treatment. So basically it's like, hey, if you're not going to go to treatment, we are going to charge you. We are going to take this really seriously. But if you agree to go to treatment instead, wiped off, that's fine. We just want you to get better. How did you approach that in your bill?
I think what we did in there is that we did say that if you got your treatment, that we would wipe the slate clean. I think we did that in our bill. The reason why I looked at that was because when it was brought to me about it, that I first part I sort of stepped back and said no, we shouldn't do this. But then I got to thinking, especially being a county commissioner, for all those years that I was a county commissioner, knowing that our best treatment facilities are in halfway houses or ComCore or coming right out of prison. Those are some of our best ones in rural Colorado.
Yes.
And I think that I thought that yes, maybe we'll go ahead and add an amendment in committee that we actually did that too. And I think that that's a really good idea, that we should do that. And we shouldn't punish people, because when they do get addicted, they're trying to figure out ways to feed their addiction. Perfect example, in northeastern Colorado, what we ran into was people were stealing wire and copper wire off of center pivot sprinklers to pay for their meth addiction at one point. So these folks are trying to sell drugs to pay for their addiction, and if we can get rid of the addiction, then they don't need to sell drugs anymore. So that's a perfect example. So I appreciate what you guys did with there, and when we did run that, I thought that was at first I was really no.
Sure, yeah.
And then when I talked to a couple of my sheriffs, they really said that this is probably a good idea.
Right, and that's kind of what we heard too, and we of course appreciate you spearheading this at the legislature, which is like the hardest place to tackle it. But I think when we talk to some law enforcement officials, that's kind of what they said too, is like, hey, we're not really out there trying to get addicts in jail. We want them to get treatment. We want to catch the drug dealers, especially the high level ones, and we just don't have enough leverage to do that right now. So I think combining these two, and California actually passed a similar ballot initiative, California of all states, in 2024, cracking down on fentanyl dealers and then requiring treatment for people who use it. So think if they can do it in California. It's one of the few things where like, oh, you usually want to say whatever they do in California, don't do in Colorado. But they finally figured out that fentanyl, not being hard on fentanyl, was creating a bunch of problems for their citizens, and people are dying. And that's exactly the problem we're having.
But again, another ballot initiative.
Yeah.
Their legislature did not do it.
Their
legislature did not tackle it. That just tells you how powerful some of those lobby groups are up there, is that they want to go against the people, and well, you should be listening to the people and you shouldn't be listening to lobbyists. So.
Right, no, I agree with you. That's a good point. Well, Senator Pelton, since you represent such a big chunk of rural Colorado, I'd love to get your perspective too on how do you think the state is now treating rural Colorado?
It's really rough right now with what's, especially just recently with the appointment of Nicole Rose Marino to the State Land Board. And she is one of those individuals that is, she has a track record of animal rights activism and believes in rewilding of land. And she's in charge of the same exact, division of the DNR, which is State Land Board, which controls a lot of the grazing leases throughout the state of Colorado.
That a lot of ranchers use.
Right, a lot of ranchers use, which in turn pays for schools.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
That's what it does. The state land, with the leases that come in, pays for schools.
Yes, yes, it does.
And we're gonna, and like I said, 89% of that is grazing leases. 89% of it is used by agriculture. A lot of it in my district. When I was a county commissioner, a lot of my district was State Land Board leases. So I'm very concerned about the direction the State Land Board is taking this.
Yeah.
And we're about ready to run into a problem in rural Colorado where the greenhouse gas emissions that the Energy Office has put such a lofty goal into having, that they're about ready to sacrifice grazing land for solar panels. And it takes acres and acres and acres of solar panels to create energy that they need.
Right.
And the first place they want to go after is the places that we use for our local economies, agriculture.
Yeah.
Six of my counties that I represent a total of 7 counties, but 6 of them are in the top 10 ag producing counties in the state.
Right.
Agriculture accounts for $47 billion of revenue to the state of Colorado. $47 billion.
Yeah.
Second,
a lot of money.
Yes, second largest economic driver in the state. And the first places that they want to attack for greenhouse gases, right now, some of our dairies are getting letters from CDPHE and the Air Quality Division, where they want to know what trucks they have, what semi trucks and what pickups they have that create greenhouse gases and methane, so they can have an inventory on what's going on.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And could they do anything about it? Could they make them use something different?
I think that they're looking at California to do a carbon tax.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
which,
that makes sense.
again, here we go. There's going to it'll be a fee, because in Colorado,
yes.
we call taxes fees in Colorado.
we do.
Yes, we just misspell the word tax in
Yes.
Colorado. And so these are all issues that we're starting to see that are coming from the legislation and the one-party rule out of the state of Colorado. And wolves is a perfect example of what's going on.
Yeah.
There has been so much political interference with CPW from the governor's office and the governor's administration with wolves. It's not based on science. It's just based on feelings and animal activism on the way that they reintroduced wolves. Right now, where I used to live, up Snowmass Creek, which is Capitol Creek, they're dealing with depredation after depredation after depredation of wolves, because they went against the ballot initiative and actually put depredating packs in Colorado from other states.
And for anyone who doesn't know what that means ones who are known to prey on
Cattle.
domesticated animals, like
That's
cattle,
correct.
right?
Cattle, dogs, whatever.
Sheep,
Yeah,
anything
exactly.
like that. Okay.
Livestock.
Yes.
And so there's so many broken promises to rural Colorado right now from the governor's administration that it's getting to the point where rural Colorado does not trust what's coming out of the state. And,
Right.
and they shouldn't. They should
No.
never trust them. But it's getting to be
Yeah.
where it's so disrespectful on the way that we've been treated that there's so much pressure coming from rural Colorado, because they're like, why should we be here? Why should we continue this? You know, these are generational farms, generational families.
Oh, yeah.
And we appreciate them. Like, when you eat meat, somebody produced that.
Yes.
And somebody got up at 5 in the morning to feed that animal. Somebody took forever to vaccinate, took forever to work that animal,
Right.
to take the time, to pay the taxes on his land, to make sure that animal has enough area to graze on. These are all things that those families should be appreciated and should be held at a level that we used to hold them up to. But unfortunately, the I-25 corridor in the state of Colorado just has been disrespectful to agriculture
Yeah.
ever since this governor got elected.
Well, and I think to your point, Senator, also, even if all they wanted to look at it with was an economic lens, the $47 billion, second biggest economic driver in the state is agriculture. Like, there's already predictions of a potential recession in Colorado, more so-called budget cuts next year, which really they just have to lessen, spending a little bit, not exactly the same as a cut, but they like to call it that. My point is, if they're so concerned about the budget and the economy in Colorado, why attack a sector that's made up of people? Sure, it's not as many people as live on the I-25 corridor, but they produce such a significant part of Colorado's economy.
Yeah, we produce their economy. And the other thing that I always point out is the 2024 greenhouse gas that came out of the EPA
Yes.
in the federal government showed that all the agriculture in the United States, every bit, even livestock, everything, was less than 10% of the greenhouse emissions. So they're just going after low-hanging fruit.
Yes.
And that's the part that, I mean, that should never be even looked at. The agriculture should be exempt because of what they do to our state, what they help our state with the economy, with feeding the world. We're the number fourth largest beef exporters in the United States. I mean, this is a
most people don't know
huge,
that.
yes, there's a huge economy
Right.
for us. And that's what we should be holding these families, these farmers, these ranchers to a level of respect that they just haven't got in the last 8 years.
No, no, they really, really haven't. Do you have any information or anything you want to share about? I know a lot of people in rural Colorado, when I go out there, because I represent CD4 on the Board of Education, they're concerned about like the roads. And if you drive, you definitely notice a difference on the roads in how they're maintained in Denver versus how they're maintained out there. So anything the legislature you think might do about that, or?
Well, I mean, it's been one of my biggest talking points since I've been in the legislature is our roads are terrible. And what I see coming forward and coming out of this legislator and this administration is that they want to force everybody into transit because it's part of their greenhouse gas roadmap, is that they want to force everybody to transit. As you well know, growing up in rural Colorado, as I well know, growing up in rural Colorado, transit doesn't work in rural Colorado.
Definitely
So the freight starts where we live, and the freight ends where we sell our products.
Right.
So when we pull stuff out of the fields, we're pulling them out of the fields on semi trucks. We're selling it to elevators. And we use those roads. It's gotten so bad in northeastern Colorado where the folks that aren't even using those roads are using county roads because they're better maintained than our state roads. We are losing so many of our roads where I live that it's getting to be a dangerous situation where semi trucks and that sort of thing are being told to slow down. They're putting up road signs. Our local CDOT guys are great. They are absolutely great. They want to make everything just so pristine, but it's the higher ups that are telling them, no, we're not putting any more money towards pavement resurfacing or anything. And all they want to tell you is it's all because of Tabor and there's not enough taxes.
Right.
When we could be prioritizing roads in this state, we could prioritize education and we could prioritize roads, and those two things we could get fully funded education and fixing our roads, and then all the rest of the stuff we can pay for in a different levels that we're paying for now. But right now, the priorities are just not there for the roads.
Right. No. And I mean, it seems like instead the state would rather fund a number of services for illegal immigrants, and they would rather fund specific pet projects and new offices and agencies that the governor creates, rather than, I think what you and I would probably agree are some of the core duties of government. Government has very few core duties, but the average person can't maintain their own road. So that is something the state should certainly be responsible for, but they're neglecting that in the name of serving people who aren't citizens of the state or the country.
Well, I mean, look at last year during the legislative session when the governor came out with his priorities in the budget. The first two places he cut was schools.
Yes.
And HUTF funds for counties, which takes care of the roads.
Exactly.
Those are the first two places that he wanted to cut from and to balance the budget. Why would we balance the budget off the backs of kids?
Right.
And why would we balance the budget off of counties who are trying to maintain their own infrastructure? That is two things that it just doesn't work for me.
No, I mean, it really shouldn't work for any of us here in Colorado in the legislature. And I know we talked on the podcast to Senator Barb Kirkmeyer, who's on the JBC, but just being part of the Senate and in Senate leadership yourself, I know there's some predictions that it's going to be a rough budget year again next year.
Yes, it is.
Do you have any insight on that you'd like to
I just
provide?
I just know that last year we had $1.2 billion more in revenue, but we were $1.5 billion in the hole. The governor or the governor and the one party leadership that we've had in the state of Colorado has a spending problem. It's not a revenue problem. And the priorities, they're just not getting the priorities correct on how they should be spending. Being in the minority, we don't get a lot of say. but we can scream from the rooftop about where the priority should be.
Yeah, well, and push back on it, like you're saying, because I think, as you said earlier, they love to blame all this on Tabor and say, oh, it's the taxpayers' Bill of Rights. If only our revenue was higher, we could give you all the things you want. And that's how they present it, when the facts are that they have plenty of revenue. It's how they choose to spend it. And what would they do with more of our revenue? They would create more offices and more special projects. And if you look at their pattern, it's not funding the key core functions of government.
And they've done everything they can to go around Tabor with enterprises,
Yes.
with everything else, and they've done everything they can to weaken Tabor. The fact that they have to ask permission to raise somebody's taxes just makes them so mad.
Yes, this is true.
And I love that part. I love how it makes sure to maintain that government does not grow, and that is exactly what we should love Tabor, because it's kept us from being California.
Right, probably the only thing that's held us back, in addition to good people who fight in the legislature too. So thank you for your work there. Any last thought you'd like to leave our listeners with? Any preview of some great thing you're running next year? Any last thought on fentanyl? Why people should care about that?
I mean, we're talking. We're going to be running. I'm going to be running another human trafficking bill, and it's gotten to the point where, and if you read the news anywhere, especially in Denver, human trafficking is starting to be a huge problem in the state of Colorado. And I hope, with this new leadership with President Trump, that with closing down the borders, it'll crack down on that. But we're starting to see a really huge rise in human trafficking in the state of Colorado.
Oh, wow. And do you know, is it connected to the gangs that are coming in, making Denver their headquarters?
There's a lot of that, and there was a lot of we don't know who the kids that came over here without parents.
Okay.
We don't know who their sponsors were and that sort of thing. There's a lot of things that we need to really figure out and crack down on. We need to make higher penalties for people who human traffic.
Yes, we do. Absolutely.
There's a lot of things. Just preying on children should be off limits.
Right.
And the sad thing is again, with the public defenders, I actually had a public defender say in my last human trafficking bill that I ran that you can accidentally human traffic somebody.
What?
He actually said that in a committee meeting, and I'm like, there's no accidentally human trafficking.
Kill someone on accident.
Yes, exactly. So
I've not heard that one before.
it's getting a little far-fetched, and they're almost like the Wizard of Oz. So it's getting to be a little crazy.
Wow. Well, that's definitely a bill to look forward to. So thank you. Thank you, Senator Pelton, for that and for your great work spearheading fentanyl, anti-fentanyl legislation in our state, as well as always standing up for agriculture in Colorado. You've been listening to another episode of the Advanced Colorado Rundown. I'm Christy Burton Brown with Senator Byron Pelton. Join us again next time.